Welcome to Intellicide, where we find out who murdered intelligence and who killed common sense. I am Anthony Gentry, and my co-host is Kyle Palmenville.
We feel we all did it. We're all at fault.
That's right. That's right.
It's our collective guilt.
1 second. I forgot to close my office door.
Don't worry. We can edit this out. Oh, wait. No, we can't.
Yeah, we don't have a staff like that.
Yeah, this is all strictly volunteer.
Right.
Man. So this is going to be our first episode in 7 months because it has been a long year for me personally. I've had 3 surgeries and just learning to walk and stuff again after getting a new hip, and got two new discs in my neck.
Oh my goodness, boy. You really been through the ringer, huh?
Yeah, it's been hell. I've used all of my deductible for the whole year. Like, I'm actually at a point now where everything I do, every prescription I get filled, is all free now because I've paid my maximum.
Yeah, that's a boat that not many people want to be in.
No, you really don't.
Right.
Yeah, I had to get the $7,000 out of pocket.
Yeah.
First, but so anyway, what spurred us to do this is obviously the Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, honestly, I'll say personally, regardless of what you feel about abortion, even Alan Dershowitz, conservative Alan Dershowitz, came right out and said this is an extreme overreach by an activist court. He explained, the way he explained it is, in his view, it's an extreme overreach and activism because the case itself, they went beyond what the case itself brought before them. The case brought before them was only dealing with pregnancies after 15 weeks because that's all the law in question was banning.
Right.
They took it upon themselves to go beyond that and say that they're going to overturn all of Roe v. Wade and take away all these rights because they don't think that they were ruled correctly in the first place. Which, I mean, it is the definition of judicial activism. They're throwing away all the precedents, saying, basically, if stare decisis, which is the basis of precedent in legal theory, doesn't hold, then all law is just a whim of whoever happens to be on the court at the time, and it's all political. None of it really has any basis in actual legal theory.
Yeah. A lot of people are concerned about historical things being overturned, and rights taken away, whether it be gay marriage, which I'm really not for personally, but people are worried about that.
Well, so let me ask you this. I mean, there is a difference though between what we believe personally, like, whether I would ever personally get an abortion or something, depending upon, if the woman's life was in danger or something, obviously, but, or whether I think it should be legal or illegal. Right.
Right. So my basis, and it comes from a religious standpoint, but if I believe that marriage was created by God for a man and woman, that doesn't jive with gay marriage. Now, on the other hand, I do believe that there is a religious marriage, and I also believe that there can be like a civil marriage, which you go to the justice of the peace. That has nothing to do with your beliefs, and that's more of a legality or legal standpoint,
right,
or whatever to say. And one of the reasons why gay marriage came into effect is that when we had civil unions, and some states recognized them, and then others didn't.
Right.
So because of that, and they wanted to have a legal standpoint in regards to inheritance and passing down like land and whatnot. That's why they went the marriage route. So if you believe that, there is a legal standing for that union, okay, that's fine, as long as we don't get religious involved.
Well, it's like, just because two people have the right to get married. Doesn't mean that they can force your church to do it. Right. Like your priest can perform a wedding ceremony, but if he didn't file the right paperwork in the county in which you're in, your marriage is not legal and it won't be recognized by the state.
Correct.
Which means like rights like, the right of your spouse to your property if you die, or power of attorney if you get in an accident or ill or something like that, those things won't be there. So there is a distinction between religious marriage ceremonies and the legal marriage recognized by the state. I don't know. And personally, to me, I was reading through Dobbs, the opinion itself, and it is, I firmly believe, honestly, after reading through this, that it's going to get overturned. It's a mess. It's going to create so many legal messes, because he's basically coming out and saying that the reason they're overturning this is because they don't think that Roe v. Wade was decided right in the first place, because they don't believe that the Constitution guarantees anyone a right to privacy, medical or otherwise. Well, if there's no right to medical privacy, what about HIPAA laws? That throws HIPAA laws out the window. Now you no longer have a constitutional right to medical privacy.
Right.
What about, this throws into question. So this is going to create so many legal messes. From what they did.
Well, so you think it's going to be overturned? Who'd overturn it? The people that overturned it.
It may take generations, because it's going to take a new court. Basically, what's going to happen is a new Supreme Court's going to come in, and if they're actual jurists, what they're going to do is come in and say, all right, the last people decided this based on their religious beliefs. There's no actual legal argument here. Right. They're basically claiming that because the Constitution doesn't explicitly state there's a right to privacy, they just threw right to privacy out. But because of stare decisis, if they are jurists and they actually recognize legal theory and the basis by which laws are held legitimate, then they'll throw this out.
Okay,
because
okay.
It's very similar to, like, the Supreme Court has made wrong decisions in the past, right?
Right.
Like the Supreme Court made the decision that, Black people were only worth 3/5 of a white person. That was wrong. Right. It was wrong when they made it, and it took a new court to. Well,
that was the Constitution that.
Oh yeah. Okay, but
so you mentioned that it's going to take a new court to come in and overturn this. So we got the justices. So Clarence Thomas is the oldest justice. He's 74. Justice Alito is 72.
Right.
Then Sonia Sotomayor is 68. Justice Roberts is 67.
Yep.
Justice Kagan is 62.
Did you know that the number of people that are required on the court is not required in the Constitution, and it has changed 7 times over history?
Yeah.
So all we got to do is increase the number of jurists to change the majority.
Okay. Yeah. But the youngest judge is Justice Barrett at 50. So when you say a new Supreme Court, you literally have so many justices that you'd have to replace.
Yeah. Or you increase the size of the court.
Well, you can do that.
Yeah, you add 2 new justices, you let Biden appoint them, and then you change the majority of the court.
Well, right, but what does that require to increase the number of justices?
Yeah, and then is it politically possible in the United States right now?
Right, and then you have to also take into account that Republicans can do the same thing when they want something changed.
Right.
So,
and let's be honest, we are in the moment. I don't know. This is just my personal opinion, but American democracy, in air quotes, is really hanging by a thread right now. And it largely has to do with the fact that we are participating in a system that is pretty clearly only the theater of democracy. Because we're basically, the 2-party system is basically a game of good cop, bad cop.
Right.
And they're both parties are on the same side, and it's not ours.
Right. Yeah. We've talked about this before. The politicians these days are more concerned about personal attacks, more concerned about the fight itself as I'm opposing the opposite side rather than what I stand on.
Many of the people, especially on the right, are fighting a culture war.
Well,
right?
honestly,
this is a whole thing that exists on the right that doesn't really exist on the left, right?
Well, but I'm sorry, Kyle. It appears on the left as well. It's just I don't think that, the thing I don't like about the left, and I had a discussion with my son about the new Buzz Lightyear movie. So, me and my wife were having a conversation about the same-sex kiss. And my issue with that was, why did it need to be in Buzz Lightyear? Now there are some adults now who grew up watching Toy Story, and so they will go and see it, or they'll take their children or whatever. But the target audience is children. And honestly, outside of pushing an agenda, there's no reason really for a same-sex kiss to be in a Buzz Lightyear movie. So
I understand it's representation.
Okay, so you could say that, but my thing is, okay, so I had a problem with the inclusion of that scene in the movie when Disney had taken it out originally, and then the animators fought to get it put back in.
Okay.
So, me and my wife had a conversation about that, and I was just opposed to that being put towards young kids. And so my son overheard, and he asked me a question. He said, so Dad, are you against inclusion? And I said, no, I'm not against inclusion. And a lot of people like to bring up Jesus and whatnot, and say like, hey, Jesus is not about hate, he's about love. And right now he wants to include all people, but I'll say this, is that he doesn't want to include the sin. Now, again, I'm talking from a religious standpoint, and I'm saying, if you believe in the Bible and that, homosexuality is wrong from that perspective, that's where I'm coming from. Now I can accept the person, whether you're gay or not, but I don't necessarily have to accept what I believe is the sin of your homosexual acts. And that's where I'm coming from.
Well, this is what they're going after next. I mean, this is the funny thing too, right? It was 7 years ago today that they passed, the Supreme Court made the decision, what was it, Griswold, that legalized gay marriage. So gay marriage has been legal across the United States for 7 years today. They used to claim, the argument by the right against gay marriage used to be that, oh, it's a slippery slope. If you allow people to marry the same sex, the next thing you know, they're going to marry their dog and their cat and whatnot. And that's a slippery slope argument, because it's a fallacy, right? There's no basis to that. It's not really true. No one has tried to put forward the idea that we should be able to marry our cats and dogs. I don't believe in that argument. But this one in particular, when people say that they're going to go after gay marriage next, that's not a slippery slope argument. Alito came right out. I'm sorry, not Alito, it was Thomas, in his opinion, came right out and said he thinks they should go after 3 cases that he named, Griswold and 2 others. And basically what those things are the idea that a man and a woman can have consensual relations in the privacy of their own bedroom and use contraceptives. That goes out the window. Gay marriage, and then I forget what the other one was. But there's so many things so that's actually, they've explicitly stated they want to take away those rights. That's not a slippery slope argument, because they said it.
Well, okay, I got you. So let me ask you this. Do you think that allowing everything has changed people's, whether it be perceptions or behaviors or whatever, over generations?
Well, yeah.
So I mean,
people are more accepting of things now than they were back then.
Well, right.
So, for instance, and this is one of the things I find extremely crazy, right? Like the fact that Clarence Thomas is specifically choosing to go after people's marriage rights, when a generation ago, if you go back and watch an episode of like All in the Family, his interracial marriage was just as controversial a generation ago. So and the same religious people backing his arguments today would have been against his own marriage
Yeah,
then.
listen.
And then you would have used the same arguments he's using today. So it's almost like he's chipping away at the ground on which his own marriage is founded.
Well, again, he might not be looking at the consequences of that, but on the flip side of that is that right. I don't agree with the argument that people will be trying to push the agenda of marrying pets or animals,
right? Yeah.
Or whatever. But I do think that as we've loosened some of our, and we can talk about this in regards to race, etc. Mm-hmm. But when you loosen what someone may say as the moral fabric or whatever, and I'll go and mention what some people say is like, casual sex. Now, casual sex has probably been around for thousands of years. Right. It wasn't looked at the same vein as it is today. Mm-hmm. But as we've become more accepting of that, I think that has changed, certain thing, and there's been consequences because of that. Whether you say that, hey, people are they don't want to get married now. Mm-hmm. And right. you see that, younger folks, hey, why get married? I can just do what I want to do without having someone tell me what to do or being beholden to another person's interests, etc. Mm-hmm. And the casualness that individuals, will engage with someone sexually, where I remember back when I was I won't say kid, but, back when I was in my late teens, early 20s, mm-hmm. There were certain things that people didn't even talk about, sexually. Now it's like, oh, that's nothing. Like, yeah, I was doing this to a man, or I was doing this to a woman, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. So
I don't know that it's more. So I would actually argue that we are in a more conservative, more Puritan phase in the moment than we were, say, back in the 1970s. I would say back in the 1970s, things were sexually a lot more loose and casual than they are today. And after the 80s, after AIDS, I think things became a lot less casual about sex.
I think that's a matter of opinion, man. I really do. The moment of free love and everything. Yes. I do recall that, and seeing things of that nature. Right. But, when you have young folks basically seeing something as oral sex as like, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. To me, that's where I'm saying that I see it differently. I see the age of free love and mm-hmm. and open marriages, polygamy, and mm-hmm. all of that, as being a consequence of us having that free love movement back in the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, swingers have been around since the 19th, for a long. I mean,
they probably right. They probably right.
Them,
but what I'm saying is that it's, when you say that it's more puritanical, I'm saying that the fact that we have even an open discussion and people being open about the fact that I have an open marriage, that mm-hmm. I am part of a swinging couple.
Like, for instance, what's her name? Isn't it one of those two new Republicans, Lauren Boebert, or one? She has like an open marriage. Like, apparently she and her husband are swingers and they go with other people.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But that's what I'm saying. So right, you have a Republican who mm-hmm. is sitting up here saying that I'm in an open marriage. Like 25, mm-hmm. 30 years ago, that would have never even, someone like Caitlyn Jenner would not exist in the Republican Party of 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
And that's what I'm saying.
Well, and there are many Republicans today who call them rhinos and don't acknowledge them as real Republicans.
Right. It's
the same thing as log cabin Republicans, right? Log cabin Republicans for the longest time have been technically a part of the Republican Party, but this year is the first year that the Republican Party actually officially came out and told them you're not welcome here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know.
On one hand, I understand what you're saying. Like, people are talking about it more. On the other hand, like, there is this puritanical push right now by some, which is this idea that, this, and it's America was founded on religious conservatism, right? That's who came to America, were Puritans, which were religious extremists in Europe. That's why they left Europe. Everyone's like, get your nuttiness out of here. And so that's what our history is.
It is. But think about, and I will agree with you that on some parts and in a lot of aspects in this country, we are fearful of sexual identity and attitudes in this country, but we fully embrace violence, and so that is crazy to me. But
no one can find a passage in the Bible that explicitly bans violence. I mean, that's the thing, is that even though the 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not kill, there's tons of examples of it happening anyway.
But I
mean, the things that God asks people to do to test their faith is to kill. He asked Isaac to kill his son to test his faith. Granted, it was a test, but the thing he asked him to do was commit violence. So I mean, there are plenty of examples of, but no, I see what you're saying, but it's true in other cultures too that aren't really. So even in China, right? Because China's morals and values are beginning to affect our own movies and TV shows more often. And in China, it is more acceptable to see violence on the screen than it is a kiss between two characters, even if it's a man and a woman. That level of intercourse, that level of public affection is frowned upon in their society. So you see violence more often than you would even see that. So, but I mean, to get back to Roe, the other thing that I think that is going to be an unintended consequence of this, this is going to be a legal mess, because like I said, if you're taking away the idea of medical privacy, that throws HIPAA laws all into question. It throws so many things into question. And if you don't have body autonomy, if there's no such thing as body autonomy, if you are not guaranteed a right to choose what to do with your own body, then next time we have a pandemic and your state says, we think it's going to save a life if you're forced to get a vaccination, and I'm not talking like they'll give you a choice like they did last time. I'm talking now, the state has the right to force you to get a vaccine.
Right.
Because they've said you don't get a choice. When there's a life on the line, the state gets to step in and make the choice for you. And they're going to find out the next time there's a pandemic when they didn't want the state to have this power in all cases, but they do.
Well, I see that breaking down.
I see that
breaking down across political lines. I can see Republican governors and those Republican led state legislatures basically saying that we're not going to force anyone, and then that being a cultural or identity war where Democratic states and governors would say, yes, you have to do this. And then, that'll be another, legal fight. But then, wouldn't the Democratic-led states have a precedent set by the Supreme Court?
They have the legal right now. They've given them the legal right to do that now. They've given the state that power.
Well, we've seen.
If you don't have the freedom from that, then you don't. And another thing too, that right now, or up until now, it was the same basis of body autonomy that made it so that they had to get your permission to harvest your organs when you die. But they don't need that anymore, because if it can save a life to harvest your kidneys and your liver and everything after you die, they don't need your permission anymore, because the state has the power to step in now and do it if it saves a life, because that's the precedent they set. Because you don't have a right to body autonomy anymore. So forced organ harvesting. And I'm not even kidding. That's not even, I mean, that's hardly even a slippery slope, because these are all based on the same rights they just got rid of.
Now, what you'll need to do is you'll need to post a link in the podcast to that ruling, so individuals can read those consequences and understand themselves what would be involved.
Make sure you read the dissent too, because the dissenting opinions really just lay waste to the majority. I mean, they call them right out and say, like, this is going to hurt so many people. It's going to destroy so many legal precedents. It's going to throw the legal system into chaos. And they're right. The dissenters are right.
Yeah. Hey, it's a contentious subject. On the flip side, Conservatives have been fighting for what they call the rights of the unborn for
Right.
decades.
Well, there's a
Um,
quote going around by a priest too that I found really sums it up about how the unborn are a very convenient group to advocate for
mhm.
because they don't get a voice. They can't speak up when you say something, when you're standing up for them and you claim that they want something, they can't stand up and correct you. And then they don't demand anything of you. Once the unborn are born, they're not the unborn, and now you no longer have to worry about them. So once they
Well,
are
right,
born
and
and they're
and I
orphans, you can wash your hands of them because they're no
right,
longer
and
the
that's
unborn.
that's what I think one of the issues that I've had with a lot of conservatives in regards to right when a baby is born, it does that baby doesn't care about his economic circumstances. It doesn't care about how many siblings it has. It doesn't care
Mm-hmm.
about whether my parents can take care of me and are able to financially support me or not. And so the individuals that fought for that baby and its right to be born should also be advocating for programs that support those parents, whether you believe that those
Yeah,
parents should
should
have more
be, but
children or
largely
not.
they're. Oh, I agree. They should
Right.
be, but
So
they're largely not.
right.
That's the
So,
problem.
and a lot of them will argue that the churches, it's up to the churches
Mm-hmm.
to make that stand and step into that role. And
Well,
and I'm
it's
I'm sure that there are plenty of churches that do those things for its members
mhm,
or whatever. But what
right.
about those
And
individuals
there's the
that
key
are
words right
not?
there. You
Right.
just said the key words right there. For their members. And if you
Yeah.
don't want to join a church, and that's kind of the problem. There are people who feel like the government should not do anything to promote the general welfare because they think that that should be the role of churches. Like all welfare and all food and everything, helping the
Yeah.
homeless and all that should just be the role of churches. The problem is if it's only up to churches, it's going to tax their resources. And so what they're going to do is they're only going to help members of their own church,
Well,
which means if you're poor and homeless, the only way you can get help is to join a religion.
again, I'm not saying that all churches do that. I'm saying that I personally
Mhm.
believe that that's what some churches do.
Mhm.
I do think that it is or it should be the responsibility of the government. When we talk about the general welfare,
But
there
actually,
is a lot that can be read in that statement right there, and that's why I say that to me uh, uh, medical care or whatever should be part of that general welfare. That hey, I may not be able to do for myself, but my country, if I'm unable to, should step in and help me.
yeah,
There are people that will argue tooth and nail against that and say
yeah.
that that's communism, socialism,
Hmm.
etc. It may
Right.
be, but guess what? I'm willing to take some aspects of that,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying that hey, it's right, but if it's for the general welfare of individuals, I'm all for it. Now
Hmm.
I don't want it to result in, hey, yeah, you get the ride free, a free ride for the rest of your life. No, I'm not saying that, but
Yeah. I
I do believe that if you're fighting for the unborn, that you should be willing to fight for some of these social programs
I
that do those functions.
so real quick because we're running out of time. It just gave me a warning soon. We only got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Um, Personally, I'm of the opinion that because of changes in technology that are going to render a vast number of jobs obsolete very soon,
Uh-huh.
the role of the government needs to change.
Uh-huh.
Anybody who says that the role of government is just the military is wildly out of touch with how reality works and what
Uh-huh.
people need to survive, because those people are saying they want to live in a dystopian, poverty-stricken hellhole.
Mm-hmm.
Every country in the world that is capable provides basic services for its citizens because it makes life better for everyone. When all boats rise, when the tide rises, all boats rise.
Uh-huh.
And if you're only raising the yachts, everyone else is going to sink, and
Right.
it's going to create chaos and civil instability. And the stated purpose of the U.S. government in the Bill of Rights is to provide for the general welfare.
Dude,
So
listen,
it's one of those things.
we've already seen that the number of millionaires, billionaires increase by
Mhm.
large amounts, and
Yep.
the gap between the haves and the have-nots is only expanding.
Yeah. Yep. And what are those billionaires doing with their money? It is so disappointing to
They're
see.
creating jobs, right?
No, I mean, well, how is when when they go to space, he might create. I mean, they're doing like these things where like they're fulfilling their personal wild fantasies about taking themselves and their friends into space and stuff like that.
Bruh,
They're not
listen,
doing anything really for the general public.
a space ticket,
Mhm.
it's not like $10, right?
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So funny you mentioned Lightyear, because just recently I took my family to the theater and we had to choose between whether we're going to go see Lightyear or the new Jurassic Park. But
Uh-huh.
we had just recently gone through and done kind of a Jurassic Park marathon where we
Uh-huh.
watched like the original Jurassic Park and then Jurassic World. And it struck me as funny that in the original Jurassic Park in 1992,
Uh-huh.
they explicitly state that when they're talking around the table about like how much they'll charge, the lawyer's like, we can charge $5,000, $10,000 a day and people will pay it. And he's like, no, I don't want this to be only for the ultra rich.
Right.
Well, then you look at like the Disney resort and what's actually happening with things. Like Disney comes out with their Star Wars experience that's $6,000 a day. The
Right.
actual price point they were talking about being only for the ultra rich in Jurassic Park. And then you're talking about the space tickets, like to go to space as a tourist, $10,000 starting price for a ticket.
Right.
It's like there's these things that are coming out now. They're only for the ultra rich.
Right. Dude.
Like you said, like the gap between the haves and have-nots is like exploding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's only going to expand. It's not going to get better.
Yeah. So I don't know. I personally, people don't react well when you strip their rights away. I mean, you look at what happened after the pandemic when people imagined that they had lost their rights because they were being given a choice about a vaccine. Now actual rights are being stripped. They're going to affect people's lives. People are going to get so pissed off. There's going to, I mean, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm simply saying it's pretty obvious when they've set up the conditions for violence.
I'll say this.
I mean, they've created this thing that where they've given the Supreme Court extra protection, right? 24-hour round the clock security for them and their families. You only have to do that in dictatorships.
We have said this before, and it's been on the news every time we have a presidential election, but elections matter. I mean, seriously, like I've had conversations with people that have complained about who's in office and this and that, and then you ask them, well, did you vote? No.
Yeah.
So votes matter. Elections
every
matter.
Single election
matters. Right. If
because
you
here's the thing that's crazy too, right? All those people who were rioting on January 6th, all those crazy nutters who are running around the country right now with Trump flags, literally in a cult worshiping a reality TV celebrity, they're running for local office. They're running for your local school board, city council, and largely, especially, I don't know about around here, where I live in Macomb County, Michigan, they're winning.
Listen, bro, I don't know if you've been past Hall Road and Hayes, or not Hayes, but Shaner. But they've had Trump rallies out there.
Yep.
I mean, what, every other weekend? I mean, even when it was cold, they were out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's they're running for local office, and it's both sides. I mean, we have individuals on the left that you might say, hey, they're not the same vein or whatever, but and I've said this before too. Both sides need to compromise. You need to talk to each other. You can't have a discussion with someone. And I had this put out there today. If you say to someone you are a liar, or you're this or you're that, you've effectively ended any kind of discussion or momentum or forward movement, because that other person is going to take what you just said and say, I'm not dealing with you.
Right.
So what are you going to get done? And that's for both sides. You can't call one side liars. You can't call other side crazy and affect.
How do you deal effectively though, when all their dealing with is lies. I mean, when all they put forward are obviously provable untruths, how do you deal with that? I mean, you can continually point out the facts to them, but that becomes an extremely tiring exercise because they won't look at facts. Because one of the things that people do is they double down on their preconceived notions, and the more facts you show them, the more solidified in the belief that they have that they're defending.
But that again, that shows how over time that this country has become, you know, we all used to watch one source of news, you know, the main broadcasters back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It wasn't all this, okay, I get my news from MSNBC or you know, Fox or whatever. And then, and it wasn't just like just what happened. These are opinion pieces. It's not news, it's opinion.
Yeah.
But people
now
are
they mix opinion into the news. What happens? There's a whole
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. People are taking opinion as news. Yeah. And that's one of the things that
there's a phenomenon too. Even if you watch straight news, they sprinkle it with opinion.
Yes. Because over time, that's what people have shown. That's what they want. They're not tuning out or whatever when they're listening to it and say, you know what? Yeah, that's not news.
It's like watching Anchorman 2. I don't know if you've seen it, but it kind of shows the rise of exactly that thing. Yes. The more he lied and just told people what they wanted to hear, the higher the ratings went.
Yes.
And that's the truth of it, is that that's what happens, is you get better ratings if you just lie and tell people what they want to hear than if you just report the facts.
Yep.
Because it's boring. And unfortunately,
well, it's a form of entertainment, right? It's not news. The news is not supposed to be entertainment. You know, and we sit up here and a lot of people lament, oh, you know, I don't want to watch the news because all it is bad news. I like the feel good stuff or whatever. Well, guess what? The news is not supposed to just make you feel good.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that they can't have feel good moments, but ultimately the news is not about, hey, I need to make you feel good. I need to tell you something, you know, and whether it makes you feel good or bad, that like, hey, that's not what I'm concerned with. I'm trying to inform you.
Yeah. All right. So we better wrap this up. We're about to run out of time here.
Okay.
This has been great.
Yes,
we'll do this again soon.
I hope so.
This is Kyle Pominville.
And Anthony Gentry signing out.
Or Intellicide.
Yep. See you next time.